Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. It's our Wednesday show, action-packed show, as always on a Wednesday here, Sam. Lots to get to, lots of news, and we're going to break it all down right here. First off, how are you?
Outstanding.
Great. How's your fridge?
It's working.
Is your
I have a
refrigerator
fridge
running?
back.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's good.
It
All right.
died on the weekend. A new one has been installed, and I believe today I can actually start to use the fridge.
The breaking news interrupted your refrigerator installation yesterday. Robert Saleh fired by the New York Jets. We're going to break that all down. We have the 33rd team's own Ari Meirov coming onto the show here, the host of NFL Spotlight, a podcast you guys should all be listening to. But Ari is going to join us briefly to go through a little bit of the Saleh stuff, and we're going to get our old friend Brad Spielberger on the show as well. Old friend from PFF, knows the cap inside and out. He'll know trade candidates. As we get closer to the trade deadline, we're going to have a little breakdown from Brad if there's any receivers on the market, if the Chiefs are going to do anything, and we'll break that all down in a bit. So we've got the Robert Saleh news. We have Drake Maye officially named the starter for the New England Patriots. We'll break that down as well. And just in a minute ago, the Texans are placing wide receiver Nico Collins on injured reserve due to his hamstring injury. He'll be sidelined a minimum of 4 games. So
Tweak the hammy. Tweak the hammy.
You ever tweaked a hammy?
I have. Tweaking a hammy is not fun.
It's not great.
It's one of those injuries that linger. So 4 weeks, shut them down makes sense, right? They've got Stephon Diggs. They've got Tank Dell. They have contingency. Make them sit the 4 weeks and just get them back healthy.
So, again, a lot to get to here. And we also have, I think, one of the best mailbag segments we will ever have. We've got double Shouty Shows here today. I mean, there's just a lot to get to, so we're going to get into it all. We're going to start with Monday Night Football and recapping the Kansas City Chiefs 26 and Saints 13. 26-13. Chiefs move to 5-0. Saints fall to 2-3. Costly game for the Saints. Derek Carr, his last pass, he injured his oblique. He's out this weekend. We don't know officially if Spencer Rattler is going to be starting or not, but that's I think things are trending in that direction, the 5th-round rookie. But Carr got injured on that classic Spags. It's 4th and 8. I'm sending the house. Makes a throw. Could have been caught, but Carr injured on that play. Chiefs moved to 5-0. Let's just recap Monday Night Football a little bit here.
Yeah, obviously Jake Haener came in at quarterback rather than Spencer Rattler in the game, but it does sound like they might want to give the start to Spencer Rattler knowing that Derek Carr is going to be out. Overall in the game, like, the Chiefs were just a much better team. You know, they were comfortably better on both sides of the ball. A couple of big plays here or there kind of kept New Orleans in it. But outside of those plays, you know, they were just comfortably second best. Like, they were really struggling to get anything going against this Chiefs defense, against Spags. You know, they had like the first time Spags sent the house, Derek Carr just kind of lofted a prayer into nowhere. And the ball had so much air under it that Cook almost completely mistimed his jump. Like, he went up to go get it and then realized it wasn't going to arrive at the time he thought it was, and was sort of catching it again on the way down from his jump. Like, he almost made a mess of it simply because he wasn't expecting there to be that much loft under the ball. The final one, so it was kind of bookended, right? The first one, bad mistake, interception. The very end one almost made the play. Ends up getting injured on the play. Receiver had a chance to make it, couldn't make the catch. But that was kind of what was happening, right? Is that any time the Saints were trying to make anything happen, it was requiring these extremely low percentage pass attempts just to cling on to this game.
The Saints were we've mentioned how depleted they are up front. You know, Eric McCoy being injured, Cesar Ruiz being injured, the center and right guard. They had a whole new group of, a whole new interior offensive line, center and both guards. The Saints have now dropped to the 2nd worst pass blocking grade in the NFL after this game, using PFF grades, just as a highlight of how far they've fallen since week 2. I've been joking about the Taysom Hill factor being the huge difference in the Saints offense, but that has coincided with the McCoy, the Ruiz injuries, and the turnover up front. The Saints looked completely different, obviously, weeks 1 to 2 versus these last 3 weeks. Now sitting here at 2-3, starting quarterback's injured. Bucks are coming to town, so it's a big time of the year here for the Saints to try to salvage their season as the NFC South looks a little bit more competitive with the Falcons and Bucks both being pretty good so far. And then from a Chiefs perspective, I thought their defense really took advantage of those injuries up front. They just made it so difficult to give Derek Carr time to throw, for the Saints to get anything going on the ground, and then the Chiefs offense, probably their most efficient outing, at least since week 1 against the Ravens.
Yeah, this was the best I think that the Chiefs have looked overall in a long time as a total football team. Their defense was spectacular. That's been really good for a while. The offense got going in a way it hasn't in previous weeks, ironically having lost some of those players to injury. Rashee Rice, et cetera, who's had his LCL surgery repair and is going to be done for the year. But we got Travis Kelce going in the first half in particular for the first time in a long time. Kelce also breaks out the magical rugby play, gains a little bit more yardage. He's really good at that stuff. But yeah, the Chiefs offense kind of found its groove for the first time seriously in a long time.
And my whole thing watching that game was when Mahomes had been throwing first quarter interceptions. Remember, they were down 10-0 the previous week against the Chargers. He took much better care of the ball. It felt like when they just kind of flipped the switch in the playoffs last year, and all of a sudden they weren't making those big mistakes until they gave up that fluky interception to Colin Saunders, which was a great play by Saunders, being in position, reading it, and then trucking for the 30-35 yards down the field. I'm not saying you take that play out, but the Chiefs were ready to score, go up like 2 or 3 scores at that point. That let the Saints back into it. They got within a score, but then the Chiefs, again, the offense moved the ball extremely well against the Saints defense during that game. But the Saunders interception, probably the highlight of the night, watching him catch and run coming out of the end zone.
Yeah, and it was a great play by him, and a sort of luck is the wrong word, but it was a fortuitous bounce, right? Like it was
a good defensive play by the Saints.
Yeah, it was a
catchable ball for Juju.
It was a pretty good ball. It hits his receiver where it needs to, and then contact from the DB bounces it up in the air, and Kalen Saunders is in the right time at the right place at the right time, picks it off, takes it out of the end zone, rumbles back for 30-something yards. So it was a really good defensive play, but it wasn't a bad offensive play. Like, they just got beaten by the defense on that play.
And it kind of, I'm not saying it puts a wet blanket on our discussion later, but we were setting this up for Brad's going to come in and we're going to say, look, the Chiefs offense has been struggling and Rashee Rice is almost certainly out for the season. He's officially on IR. What are they going to do offensively? And all of a sudden on Monday night, it's like they're turning back the clock, 3 to 6 years in a Chiefs history where Kareem Hunt comes out, runs for over 100 yards in a very efficient outing, right? It's a lot of 4 to 6, 4 to 7 yard gains for Kareem Hunt, keeping the Chiefs offense on schedule, and then Juju Smith-Schuster going over 100 yards receiving as well. Travis Kelce catching a lot of passes, looking pretty good, not so much after the catch, but still getting open. The Chiefs found a way to, get those guys involved and make up for the Rashee Rice loss during this one.
Yeah. They showed that they can still function without that sort of wide receiver threat. Xavier Worthy he's still a big part of this offense. It's an interesting dynamic because there's clearly things that he's not great at, but there are also ways, A, they're good at getting him the football or exploiting his speed. B, I think we sort of saw in this game, he's going to win some defensive pass interference calls simply by being fairly lightweight and weak down the field.
There's a 46-yarder down the field, and there may have been another one that the broadcast thought was missed. I mean, they almost had 100 yards worth of defensive pass interference calls on deep balls to Xavier Worthy, even though he didn't catch either pass.
And it's the type that the 40-something yarder was the type of defensive pass interference where the call's fine, right? I'm not complaining that they made it, and it's the type of call that gets given all the time. It is the type of call that doesn't get given to a guy that weighs 200 pounds, though. Being 165 pounds is a necessity. It's a requirement to getting that call, right? You don't get that if you're bigger, because that contact simply doesn't register. But because he's 165 pounds, that type of contact has a disproportionate effect on his sort of body down the field, and suddenly he's like launched out of the way, and the ref's easy flag. If a guy weighs 200, that contact barely knocks him off the stride, and the official doesn't even notice it. He's going to win some defensive pass interference calls because of that lack of size, which will help offset some of those plays where the lack of size gets him eliminated from the play, the way we saw, against the Bengals and Cam Taylor-Britt.
Since the Rashee Rice injury, we've seen now multiple Xavier Worthy deep shot attempts. I think the Chiefs have made it a point to say, look, we're going to do this 2 or 3 times a game. the ones where when Mahomes has room in the pocket, he's like crow hopping into this thing, throwing it as far as he can. He aired that thing out to get the 46-yard pass interference. So we're going to see more of that from Worthy. He also had a red zone touchdown with Travis Kelce taking the shotgun snap and handing it off to him. A lot of usual Chiefs stuff, I think, in this one, and they won it handily, 26-13. Anything else on Monday Night Football, Sam?
No, other than, big picture, Kansas City is now 5-0, one of two undefeated teams, with the surprise Vikings being the other one. But the Chiefs, in this quest for the three-peat and, true dynastic legacy, look as intimidating and as scary as they've ever looked for the rest of the NFL. With
Mahomes playing,
far from his best.
From a production standpoint, middle of the pack by almost every measure, EPA per play or QBR. PFF's got him closer to the top 10 as far as his contribution to that production. But the passing offense has been average across the NFL, and they're still 5-0.
Right. And theoretically, reeling from injuries in a way that would have been seen as problematic going into the season. Yeah, they look as scary as ever. And then the Saints, they started off hot, but they're now in a battle to keep up with those other teams that you mentioned, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, within that division.
All right, let's get to this Drake Maye news. It was kind of hinted at on Monday morning by Gerard Mayo that he kind of answered the question differently about the starting quarterback, and then it came out officially yesterday that the number 3 overall pick in the draft, rookie quarterback Drake Maye, will make his first NFL start. It's not his debut. We did see him for a couple dropbacks against the Jets back in Week 3, but it's his first start. It's Sunday at 1 o'clock against the Houston Texans. It is at home, but Drake Maye getting the start here for the 1-4 New England Patriots.
Yeah. Hard not to see this as a bad error in judgment, I think, or just a knee-jerk reaction that is not in the best interest of the football team long term. Maybe it's in the best interest of the team this week, but that should not be their approach to this. This is the worst offensive line in the NFL from a pass blocking standpoint by a reasonable margin. It might be the worst receiving core in the NFL. It's a terrible situation for a young quarterback to be thrown into. Timo Riska, PFF Moo, on Twitter was sort of making the point that it's ironic that teams, it's like self-defeating, right? Teams sort of use this barometer of, we have to put the rookie in now only after it's been proven that the environment is not good enough to support a rookie, right? Like the offensive performance is so bad that we have to turn to the backup, but the backup is the rookie who's probably going to look worse or at least be in a tougher situation because you've literally just proven that the environment cannot support a rookie because it's bad, right? That's why you're making this change. So I feel like this is just self-defeating. Like the game plan should be what is in the best interest of Drake Maye's long-term development, not what gives us the best chance to win in Week 6.
Yeah, that's always my take, Sam. It's always my take. Now, the one thing we don't know, and that I acknowledge on that take, which is whatever's best for Drake Maye in 2025 and beyond. That is the most important thing. The 2024 New England Patriots do not matter in this equation, right? You can't make that matter, and you have to be consistent with that from start to finish. You cannot let Jacoby Brissett's performance dictate what you do with the quarterback whose development your entire franchise depends on. You just can't do that. It cannot be Jacoby Brissett's performance. It can't be the feels or you're going to lose the locker room. It has to be Drake Maye's development first. The only part that we don't know about that I always say is whenever he's ready, right? So whenever he's ready. So the two things that dictate when he should play, in my opinion, when he's ready and a little bit about the environment, right? You don't want to throw him out there with backup offensive linemen, but who are backups to already subpar offensive linemen with receivers who all the stuff you said, right? But I don't know. Is Drake Maye ready? Have they been watching him? They've been giving him 30% of the reps, and they're watching him. They're like, his development is at the point where we feel good about him. We don't know that part of the equation. But to me, that has to be a part of the equation. If they haven't seen tangible improvement and they haven't given this baseline for what ready looks like, and he hasn't hit that, then this is a panic move. If he's hit that point where they said, hey, we want to see some level of mastery of the offense and whatever the standard is, and he's hit that standard at practice, fine. But then you have this other piece of, Well, the whole environment is horrible.
Yeah, even if you have seen like a significant improvement, and in practice he looks like the better of the two quarterbacks, that number one, part of this is Jacoby Brissett has not been playing bad football, right? This is not a case of like Jacoby Brissett has not been plugging this Bryce Young furrow this season where you're like, dude, we need to get this guy off the field just because it's so bad. Like, it doesn't matter what the backup situation is. You have to take him out. It's so atrocious because we do risk losing the locker room and all this other stuff. Like, Jacoby Brissett has played fine. He's not been the problem. Okay, the production has not been outstanding. The overall, offense hasn't been good. That's not his fault. And I'm not saying he's been playing great, but he hasn't been bad, right? This is the worst offensive line in the NFL. They rank 32nd in PFF's pass blocking efficiency metric behind the Tennessee Titans. They have given up 79 pressures so far this season. This is a disaster of an offensive line, and he doesn't have any receivers to throw to as well. We got young guys and Demario Douglas. This is not a group that's going to elevate the play of a quarterback. So even if you're seeing this development of Drake Maye in practice and he looks better than Jacoby Brissett, the situation is so bad on paper that there is absolutely no way you can be confident that it is not going to damage him long term, right? And you can make the argument that if a player can't withstand that kind of long-term beating, he's not going to be your quarterback anyway. Maybe, but it's definitely true that those types of sustained beatings have damaged quarterbacks in the past. And good quarterbacks, right? And not even just rookies. Yeah, David Carr is the classic example. Guy that went out there, took an absolute ass-kicking, and was never really the quarterback that he was expected to be. You can maybe point to Bryce Young and say that the situation damaged him. But I go back and think about quarterbacks like Mark Bulger, right? Mark Bulger replaced Kurt Warner and was so good that the Rams voluntarily said goodbye to A Hall of Famer, B, a guy that had the greatest story in NFL history at that point, right? A dude that went from stacking shelves to Super Bowl MVP. They got rid of the feel-good story because Mark Bulger was good enough. They were like, dude, we can't not have this guy starting a quarterback. That offensive line deteriorated to the point where Mark Bulger was broken by it. He was
after a few really good years.
He was a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback.
After a few really good years.
A high-end quarterback that got broken by the sustained onslaught of pressure by that offensive line. It can be damaging, and it can be especially damaging to a young quarterback. There is simply no way that you can be confident that it will not damage Drake Maye. So I think this is too big a risk. I say keep his ass on the sideline, let him learn.
Suck it up.
Until you draft better players or you sign better players in the offseason.
That's where the human element of this is really difficult because I don't know if this was their plan. I don't know if you asked them in August, when do you expect to see Drake Maye? If they would have said, week 12, week 13, we'll give them, the last few weeks of the season, feel good about that. But was that because they thought Jacoby Brissett would hold the fort? Was that because they thought they were better than they were? If they're like, man, we're way worse than we thought, got to get the rookie out there.
Yeah.
That's rough. Now listen, the first seam route that he throws, the first seam pass that he throws, that building is going to be electric. You're going to hear a roar in Foxborough louder than Bailey Zappi got. That was the last time that place was electric, was when Bailey Zappi threw a touchdown in primetime. And that's going to happen. And the fan base will get a couple passes maybe of a jolt of adrenaline. But this is the Texans defense.
Yes.
That just held Josh Allen to a 9 for 30 stat line. A stat line we haven't seen since 1992. Just did that to Josh Allen. They just sacked Caleb Williams 100 times a couple weeks ago. It was 100, right? Made people question the number one overall pick in the Bears' decision in his second overall start because of what Houston was able to do. DeMeco Ryans in that defense from a pass rush and a blitz perspective. So that's the other piece of this. And you and I talk about that a lot. And, who do you have the first start against? You can't be like, well, let's make sure it's against the Panthers because they can't rush the passer. You got to start them when you got to start. Like, at some point, you got to face NFL defenses, but this is not an easy defense to go up against in start number one.
But also, to be clear, it's not about the next 60 snaps. It's about the next 700 snaps.
Absolutely.
For him, right? Like, even if he goes out there and surprisingly looks great against Houston, like he does really well, he outperforms expectations. Somehow, it provides the spark that they've been looking for. They actually have success against Houston's defense, and he looks great. That still doesn't mean it's good, right? Because it's not about the next 60. It's about the subsequent 700 after that. And will the totality of those snaps be damaging to him? Like, this situation is terrible, and maybe you can overcome that for 50 snaps or 60 snaps for a single game, and it looks great. I don't think you can overcome it for the next, 3 quarters of the season and it not be a problem. So when you're like, what was the plan originally? There's simply no way that the plan was, after 4 or 5 games of horrific offense, we decide to throw a rookie out there and hope that it fixes everything, right? There's no way that they would have constructed that argument in August. This is what's going to happen this year. We understand that we're going to have no offensive line and no wide receiver group because we kept the number 3 pick and drafted our quarterback. We're going to suffer through a month of awful play. Jacoby Brissett can take that. And then once we think it's hit the lowest ebb we can hit, we're going to make a change at quarterback, throw in a rookie, and hope that he's got enough spark to fix it all. There's no way. So if that wasn't the plan in August, it shouldn't be the plan now.
One last thing I just want to add to that. I completely agree with you there. One last thing. I saw Kev Cole talking about he was more of the mind that, like, well, the quarterback fixes everything, no matter what, if he's good. And there's an element to, like, Jaden Daniels on paper. We had questions about the offensive line. They only had 1 receiver. Boom, all of a sudden it's one of the best offenses because he looks special. And historically, Kevin Cole went back and he said, well, Justin Herbert as a rookie had bad pass blocking. Joe Burrow had bad pass blocking. Just looking at PFF pass blocking grades, C.J. Stroud did as well. My counter to that would be that they all had a receiving group, though. Herbert had receivers to throw to. Burrow had T. Higgins that first year. Then they added Jamar Chase the next year. And C.J. Stroud had multiple receivers who ended up being pretty good. We didn't know at the time. Plus Shanahan, disciple and Bobby Slowick calling the plays. I don't know. The Patriots don't have an established play caller. They have Alex Van Pelt. They don't have any receivers that we think are any good at the moment. And they have the offensive line issue. That's the difference, I think.
The 3 pillars.
The 3 pillars all look to be subpar.
Right. There's also a difference between a not great offensive line and the worst offensive line in the NFL. Like, there are degrees to how good these things are.
They're bottom 5 in PFF pass blocking grade and run blocking grade.
Yes.
The running offense, the rushing offense with Ramondre Stevenson. Like, I think they have good backs, but they don't have a great running game.
They are throwing him into a situation. If you took last year's Tennessee Titans and removed Nuke Hopkins from the starting lineup, that's what they're throwing him into, right? And we were saying last year was such a bad situation that you could not get a fair baseline on Will Levis based off that, right?
So we'll see.
That's what they're throwing him into this year. So it's not comparable to what some of these other quarterbacks were thrown into.
It'll at least make New England more entertaining to watch because we all want to know. We all want to know how the rookie does. We'll talk about that entire game tomorrow on the preview show, of course. Right now, we've got our first. We have again 2 Shouty Show segments here. The first one is Jets centric, so we can talk about Robert Saleh and his firing. So let's get to the first Shouty Show segment. This one again being Jets centric here.
Congrats! You just fired the most competent coach on your staff. Nat Hackett is probably the worst OC in the league.
Nat.
He's still there because Aaron makes sure he's there. So this will be the 5th head coach, interim coach in 11 years. Does it sound like a well-run business? If you owned a company, you're on your 5th CEO in 11 years, would you be a well-run company? For the record, if they beat the Bills on Monday Night Football, that terrible Robert Saleh coach, they would have been in first place. So the interim coach is Jeff Ulbrich, who was the loud guy on Hard Knocks, former player. Kyle Shanahan tried to hire him at one point, kind of an alpha guy. He could win. I mean, interim coaches like substitute teachers, everybody loves them. He could win. I wouldn't doubt it. But in the end, you're on your 5th coach, head coach or interim coach in 11 years. This is what you are as a franchise.
I kind of agree with a lot
It's
of
tough to disagree with any of that. Other than, I don't know if Saleh is the best coach in the building. Like, Ulbrich might be. I don't know.
Right. But, I mean, he was referring specifically to, Tim or Nathaniel Hackett.
He calls him Nat.
Nat Hackett.
Nat Hackett.
Nat Hackett.
I mean, look, we've highlighted the Hackett-Rodgers relationship quite a bit here. Hackett hasn't been a good offensive coordinator throughout his career. He happened to be in the building when Aaron Rodgers had the 2 MVP seasons, which only coincided. I'll say this. The Matt LaFleur, the late career Aaron Rodgers, without Matt LaFleur splits are starting to become pretty significant.
Yeah.
If you go back to, say, 2018, when the Packers were 4-7 and Mike McCarthy got fired, if you go back to about 17 or 18 in Rodgers' career, and you just split it up, and I'll do this maybe this week, without Matt LaFleur. And even like Matt LaFleur year 1 was 2019, and it wasn't great, but 20 and 21 was outstanding. The without on Matt LaFleur seems to be the biggest driver to Aaron Rodgers' success, not Nat Hackett.
Yeah, I mean, that one I think is a fairly reasonable point. Let's see what the second Shouty Show clip is.
The offense was inept when they had Zach Wilson. The offense was inept when they had Mike White. It was inept when they had Joe Flacco. It was inept when they had Sam Darnold. Talk about the quarterback play. 3 interceptions again. 53% completion percentage last week. 57 this week. Nah, I'm not going to let you blame it on the offense because you didn't blame the offense when they had those other quarterbacks. You blame the quarterback. But you want to stay in good graces and you won't call Aaron Rodgers out. He's playing awful. You know it. Everybody in New York knows it, and everybody around the NFL knows it. He's playing terrible. Call it like you see it.
That is full Shouty Show.
That's good. That's a lot of yelling. That's a lot of yelling there, Shannon Sharp.
I don't know. Here's the thing, right? Like, Cowherd is like, oh, they fired the wrong guy. I don't know why they needed to fire anybody. They're 2-3. They just lost to a team that's 5-0, right? In London. It's like, this is not a situation that needed to be blown up and quick. It's a disaster. Let's reverse course. Like, they're in a better situation than the Bengals are, and the Bengals aren't firing people, right? If you think that you actually have a chance of going on a run, and again, next week is Buffalo, who are supposed to be, the best team in that division. You win that game, you're 500, you're right back in it. I don't agree with the idea that Aaron Rodgers is playing terrible, period. Rodgers had a bad game against Brian Flores' defense, which has put everybody in a blender, right? Brock Purdy played badly against Brian Flores' defense. C.J. Stroud looked like a lost rookie quarterback in the headlights against Brian Flores' defense. Aaron Rodgers had a bad game against Brian Flores' defense. Fine. But he's actually playing reasonably well this season. He has 4 interceptions, 3 of which came in that game, right? He's playing okay. The offense as a whole is not playing well. Rodgers individually is not playing particularly badly, right? So I agree that the offense needs to improve. I don't agree that the solution to that is fire the defensive-minded head coach.
The part of that is normally I am of the mind that a PFF grade does a really good job of isolating the quarterback's play, and something like EPA per play is more of a team-driven stat. Let's pretend that that's true. The problem is that Aaron Rodgers, as I said the other day, is a big part of the personnel. He is a big part of who's out there making plays. And I feel like he's a little bit more to blame than maybe some of the production metrics would indicate at this point. So I think there is a lot on Rodgers.
Right,
No, I'm not saying he can't come out of it
And
either.
none of that is solved by firing a coach.
No, it's not.
So that's the problem, right? Is that if you believe that Rodgers is personally at fault for the offense on the basis that he's essentially the offensive coordinator, that's a reasonable.
So you agree with Shannon?
Well, that's a
that
reasonable.
That he shouldn't.
That's a
Saleh
reasonable
shouldn't have been
point
the fall
to
guy.
make. But the solution to that is he needs to get challenged, which Saleh's the most capable person of doing that within that building, to actually go back to Rodgers and be like, dude, you need to pull your end of this to a better place. The defense is good. You need to get this more on track if we assume that Nathaniel Hackett, Nat, is a puppet, right? So that's my problem with this. If you think Rodgers is individually more at fault because he is effectively the coordinator as well, then you don't fire the one guy in the building that might have a shot of actually going head-to-head with him and saying, fix it.
All right, let's get to the 33rd team's own, Ari Meirov. He's going to join us right now. He's got little insight, I would say, as far as trades and players who could be moved leading up to the trade deadline. We'll kind of get want to know how surprised he was as well. Hey, Ari. How you doing, man?
What's going on, guys? Crazy NFL day on Tuesday. I mean, it felt like the offseason with how much was going on.
Were you? Yeah, how surprised were you as far as Robert Saleh and that firing right off the bat?
I mean, it felt like the offseason with how much was going on. Were you? Yeah, how surprised were you as far as Robert Saleh and that firing right off the bat?
Were you? Yeah, how surprised were you as far as Robert Saleh and that firing right off the bat?
I mean, I was surprised at the timing. Like, we all knew that this front office and coaching staff was in danger if they're not winning. I just didn't think it would happen after 5 games and a 2-3 record going into Monday Night Football with a chance to be tied in first place with a win. So the timing was surprising, but this owner going to London, where of course he was an ambassador to the United Kingdom and had all his friends there, getting embarrassed in that country against the quarterback he got rid of was not fun. And he made an emotional decision, I would say. And they're moving on. And instead of firing him at 2-5 when this thing could be over, let's fire him at 2-3 when we still have a shot. So I think that was part of the thinking over here.
Is that what we're settling on as like the real reason for this firing? Is it ultimately comes down to he got embarrassed in London in front of his ambassadorial friends? Like, is that seriously where we are? And I'm not disagreeing, but
I wouldn't say that's the main reason. I mean, Woody Johnson did not hire Robert Saleh. Christopher Johnson did. And he actually considered firing him at the end of last season, but they had this entire meeting and they all agreed, like, hey, we can't really fire this guy when we put all our eggs in the basket of Aaron Rodgers. They only played 4 games. But this has been in the back of his mind for a while. And it basically got to a point where this game, losing to the Vikings, and listen, I don't know if I agree with it. I mean, the defense has been one of the better ones in the NFL. Brian Flores has done a great job against a bunch of quarterbacks this year, and he embarrassed Aaron Rodgers as well. So I don't know if they should have done it now, but I'm sure it definitely played a part of it. I mean, we've seen many coaches get fired after going to London and getting embarrassed there. And these owners, when they get embarrassed, they don't like it. So I think that could definitely play a part of it as well.
There was jokes about that being a thing, but it sounds like that's actually potentially part of the equation there.
getting embarrassed at home is bad. Getting embarrassed in London in front of all the aristocrats, you don't want that.
How does that work for you in your billionaire ranking, Sam? That's a power billionaire move.
Really shoots them up, yeah.
Ari, the NFL trade deadline, it's much later than it used to be. It's not until Tuesday, November 5th, but we're at the point where there's a few 1-4 teams. There's Davante Adams. Who are we looking at? First off, who do we think is going to get traded beyond Davante Adams, and how quickly do you think we might actually hear some of this trade news over the next couple weeks?
I mean, it is early. Like you said, they moved it back another week this year. This year, November 5 in the world, we have an election, we have the trade deadline, so that's going to be great. But it's going to be interesting because like the one position that is probably loaded the most is receiver, and there are guys out there. I mean, I'll run through some names. We all know about Davante Adams, and his situation is still ongoing, and it really could happen at any time. But aside from him, like you have Amari Cooper in Cleveland, like all these names I'm going to mention now are in the final year of their contracts. Amari Cooper in Cleveland, DeAndre Hopkins in Tennessee, Zay Jones coming off a suspension right now in Arizona. You could look at a guy like Deontay Johnson in Carolina. Like all of those guys make sense. All of those situations, there's different reasons behind them. Hopkins and Cooper, of course, are on losing teams. Zay Jones, I think the receiver room is a bit crowded there, and he did take visits with other teams before signing in Arizona, including Kansas City, who we know is in the receiver market. And then Deontay Johnson, I know that the Panthers really like him, 28 years old. He's come alive a bit with Andy Dalton, but final year of his contract, like I said, I would imagine that they want to extend him and keep him, but I know for a fact there are a number of teams who would have interest in trading for him, including a team like the Chiefs. So I think that's the one name where a team could get significant value for a player in the final year of his contract.
Yeah, the Chiefs seem like the most obvious one. Do you think, Monday night offense looked really good? They got Juju Smith-Schuster going over 100 yards, Travis Kelce looking pretty good. Do you think the Chiefs are still very much in this wide receiver market?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool to see what they're able to do with a player like Juju who cannot figure it out in New England, Kareem Hunt, who, of course, was on the street all offseason long. Like, this is what Patrick Mahomes does. But this front office, this ownership group, the coaching staff, they're taking this idea of having a three-peat very, very seriously. And over the last couple of years, they've made receiver moves. Like 2 years ago, they traded for Kadarius Toney. Last year, they traded for Mecole Hardman. Like, they were not big moves, but they made something. And they cannot just move forward with this receiver group for the next, 12 games into the playoffs and think everything will go well. They do think Marquise Brown will be back at some point, potentially in the playoffs, so that is good news. Rashee Rice is out for the year, but I anticipate them making some sort of trade. Amari Cooper is very interesting simply because the Browns have already brought down his salary to the league minimum, so any team could easily pick him up and do a trade with them. The Browns are 1-4. Their upcoming schedule is like the Eagles, the Bengals, the Ravens, the Chargers. I mean, it's spiraling out of control a bit in Cleveland, and they just paid Jerry Jeudy this offseason, and they were now looking to extend Amari Cooper. So it's pretty clear that this is his final year in Cleveland. If they keep on losing, I think it makes sense that Amari Cooper is a name that could be traded, and I think he would make sense for a team like Kansas City.
Does the chase for a three-peat, like this historical thing, change Kansas City's potential aggressiveness level? Like we tend to, so the Jets, right? They're going all in for one ring. They're trying to get a championship. The Chiefs obviously have already done it a couple of times now with Mahomes, but they're now chasing history. They're chasing this thing that's only been done in the pre-Super Bowl era. Does that make them more aggressive than they would have been a couple of years ago when they're just sort of chasing a regular championship?
The thing is, the Chiefs, I don't anticipate them going after a name with a big salary. That's not what they're looking to do. Like, even when they traded for Tony and when they traded for Mecole Hardman, like, those guys were not making a lot. Like, the Jets actually paid most of the contract for Mecole Hardman last year. They're not looking to spend a lot of money. This is an ownership group. When you look at cash spending, the way they handle the salary cap, they're not one of those teams that keep on pushing it forward and pay huge signing bonuses and those type of things. So they're not going to look out there to trade. Even if Devontae Adams was available for them, which he's not, they would probably not do it under his current contract with the amount of money that he's owed. So they're looking for players who do not have huge base salaries, and that's why a name like Cooper makes sense. I think the one name that they could go after that might be a little bit more expensive would be a name like Deontay Johnson, who is making some money here this year, but he's also, again, in the final year of his contract. But that would be, again, a rental for them. But that's a name where they could see him fitting in the offense, gelling with a guy like Patrick Mahomes, and actually making a huge impact for a team like them. But if we're talking about a big money player, I don't think that's what they're looking to do, but they are looking to add somebody, and I would bet that they will make a move before that November 5 trade deadline.
All right, we heard your phone blowing up a few times just in the few minutes you've been here. We're going to require you to read the text messages that are coming in and break any news directly here on Check the Mic. That's the rule.
No, nothing going on right now. I mean, it's kind of crazy because yesterday as it all unfolded, like there was obviously the Robert Saleh element, but there's still like this element that Devontae Adams could still happen to the Jets because we're all waiting for that to possibly happen. His situation is like so interesting because the news that has happened over this last day with Devontae, it's been like, all right, the Saints just played Monday night, but Derek Carr, his quarterback, gets injured, and they're now in a 3-game losing streak. Does that now take him out of the equation? So that was like a big conversation yesterday, and now you have this entire Jet situation. Does Robert Saleh getting fired have any effect on this? I don't know why it would. He never played with Robert Saleh. The reason he wants to go there is Aaron Rodgers. So that thing is still alive, and I think the Devontae Adams situation, which we have not really talked about a lot, it's really fascinating simply because the Raiders are looking for a second-round pick, but they don't want to pay for any of his contract. So it's like, hey, guys, you can't get everything. So are the Raiders going to lower their asking price here in the coming days, or are they going to pay some of that contract? And will the Jets make such a move where, we just fired Robert Saleh, everyone is making fun of us, let's bring in this big name into the offense and bring a bit of a spark into the offense. So that is a trade that we're all like waiting for, and it could happen at any point. And of course, that would be another big shakeup in the NFL if it does happen here at any point.
Woody could set up a conference call with all his buddies and be like, look, traded for Devontae Adams. You thought it was bad on Sunday, and that was embarrassing and all, but man, we got Devontae Adams now. It's okay. We made a big trade.
Call out the British people?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get the
it's great. As somebody who lives in New York, his timing yesterday of firing Robert Saleh was just perfect because we also have playoff baseball going on right now. So, like, the back pages aren't necessarily dominated by Robert Saleh. There's the Mets winning yesterday. We have the Yankees playing tonight. The Mets are playing also tonight. So, like, it's not necessarily all Jets are garbage right now here in New York. So, the timing was probably perfect for him from a New York sake.
Yeah, you're a Mets fan. Is that right, Ari?
I am a Mets fan. We are up 2-1, have a chance to clinch tonight. I mean, this is it's pretty good times right now in New York. We never get to have some good times with our sports team, so this is pretty cool.
Mets are on quite a run for sure. So, Ari, we appreciate you joining us. Tell everybody where they can hear you on NFL Spotlight every week.
Yeah, we have our NFL Spotlight show here on the 33rd team. Every single Tuesday, we have a special spotlight guest, someone in the NFL, a player, a coach, an executive who deserves more recognition, more spotlight, basically. And this past week, we just had Washington Commanders linebacker Frankie Louvu on the show. It's actually going to be announced here in the next hour. He might be Defensive Player of the Week. It's probably him or Dexter Lawrence, but had a huge game on Sunday versus the Browns, 2.5 sacks, a forced fumble, 7 tackles for that Commanders defense. He's a former undrafted free agent, was with the Jets. He mentions in the show how he didn't love football while he was there. He was getting cut, back on the roster, off the roster, and all that. Eventually finds his way to Carolina, gets paid this offseason in Washington. These are the stories that we like to spotlight. These are the players we like to root for. And he was on the show here this week, also spoke about the current Commanders team, Dan Quinn, Jaden Daniels. A very good interview there with Frankie Louvu. Every single Tuesday, we have a guest. Every other day, we go around the NFL talking about the biggest NFL topics, the ripple effects it has around the league. So NFL Spotlight, wherever you listen to your podcast.
All right, Ari, thanks for joining us today. We'll do it again soon.
Anytime, Sam and Steve. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks, Ari.
Go check out NFL Spotlight. Frankie Louvu, yeah, monster game on Sunday. And appreciate having Ari on with a little bit extra insight as far as what we should be looking for trade candidates and what's going on with New York.
Yeah, Louvu, a perfect player for that type of concept as well, right? A guy that should get more of a spotlight. Frankie Louvu has been a really good player for a really long time now and was a guy that Dan Quinn prioritizes bringing over as, somebody that would shift that culture, that would change the way everybody was playing. And he's still a great player.
We're going to have Brad Spielberger on here in just a couple minutes. With Brad, we used to work with him over at PFF. He's now living in the agency world, so not doing his insider stuff nearly as much, not necessarily putting his opinions out there on Twitter, but we appreciate him joining us. He still, Brad, knows the cap inside and out, and it might be a similar conversation with what we had with Ari, but more from maybe similar players that we're discussing, but more about the logistics of who can actually make these moves,
right?
Who can actually be moved, and which teams actually have the cap space to do that. So
yeah.
let's bring Brad in here.
Let's go.
A little reunion here as well. There he is.
What's up, Brad?
Hey, Brad.
Oh, muted.
You have to unmute.
I'm muted. Hey, you can tell I'm not on Zoom that often anymore. How you guys doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Good, man. Good. Just living the dream. Coming off of the high of this Saturday, I was in the building in Nashville, so it doesn't get a whole lot better than that from my Vanderbilt Commodores.
Were you making your way down? What is it? Down the street with the
down Broadway.
Broadway.
I did not walk the goalposts all the way into the Cumberland River. I know a couple people who did. I won't say their name for potential legal reasons, but no, I didn't do that. But I was on the field a little bit. It was pretty surreal.
Did you go hug Diego Pavia? Did you get to hug him?
I should have. His brother ran out, probably the first guy on there. If people don't know, his brother is like a super fan. He's a lunatic in a good way. And he was not only the first guy on the field hugging Diego, he was also riding the goalpost out of the stadium.
That's great.
Like a horse. So it was, yeah. I didn't talk to any players. They were hugging relatives and loved ones and just living the dream.
Brad's a Vandy guy. If you haven't caught it, the Vanderbilt win over Alabama, historic program-defining win. So glad that you got to experience that. And tell everybody where you're at. You're the Director of Football Administration at Grand Central Sports Management, so you're less in the spotlight, so to speak, in the social media world now. But what's going on?
Yeah, definitely. So the title means I'm the contract negotiator for the agency over here at Grand Central. Been around it's been a bunch of different iterations, but 5 or 6 years now, and essentially working day-to-day on contracts for all of our NFL clients, and then, of course, trying to recruit more and more NFL clients to come into our umbrella. So, yeah, not doing a lot of the social media and the, on-screen stuff like that, but still obviously keeping tabs with pretty much every single contract across the NFL, potentially, honestly, at more of a granular level, more about language and the ramifications of different moves. And, we'll get into trades and stuff like that and all those different things. So, yeah, really just kind of taking a lot of those skills applied and gained at PFF and applying it directly to, benefiting NFL players that work with us as much as possible.
You're basically Jay Moore now from Jerry Maguire. That's where we are?
That's where we're at. That's the easier, short answer.
That's the short answer. So we wanted to have you on here because teams are starting to have bad records and they've got good players and all the trade rumors start. And as soon as Rashee Rice got hurt, of course everybody's expecting the Chiefs to make a move. You have people saying, "Oh, they should just trade for Tyreek Hill," and it's like, all right, let's get Brad on here to kind of sort through that. So let me start with the Chiefs. Do you expect them to look to acquire a wide receiver? And if so, are there certain names where it does actually make financial sense?
I think they would look into it to a degree. They're really not a team that's aggressive. I feel like we have this conversation about X position gets hurt in Kansas City, and we have this panic conversation for a month. They end up either doing nothing or they bring in an old pal that they used to work with. Your classic Mecole Hardman was the case last year. I think Juju Smith-Schuster, who of course just had a great game, was obviously signed, not traded for. But as soon as the Patriots cut him at the end of offseason, he was a no-brainer. Go back to Kansas City, kind of in a weird way, be the Rashee Rice replacement, specifically in that role. We have seen more downfield work from Rashee Rice, but finding soft spots and zones, sitting down underneath, being a good run blocker, and just a space eater underneath, opposite Travis Kelce, has been Juju for a while, and he fit in seamlessly. So the only one I would say maybe, it's not Tyreek Hill. I don't think Tyreek Hill is going anywhere. Frankly, I think Tyreek Hill's like, look, I got my rings. Now I'm just getting money living in South Beach, and all the credit to him for that. DeAndre Hopkins was a receiver the Chiefs were interested in. There was a level of interest when he did sign with the Tennessee Titans. Is it still there? I don't know. But if the Titans lose one or two more games, and they obviously sign Calvin Ridley, they have at least another guy that they can say, well, you know what? Will Levis still has an alpha in Calvin Ridley and some other tertiary options. He's one that I think would be interesting. His price point is also about $500,000 a week going forward the rest of the season. I've seen some people talk about Devontae Adams like $1 million a week going forward. So long answer short, D-Hop would be interesting to me as a guy to go to Kansas City.
How does the salary work as far as picking up a player midseason? As far as the bonus structure is paid out, that's not necessarily a part of it. So what are teams like? How much cap space does a team normally need to be able to get even some of the high end contracts?
Yeah, so first at a simple level, it's not quite the simple, but if you just look at base salary, that's most likely what's going to travel to a new team. Go on overthecap.com. Like you said, ignore prorated bonus, ignore regular roster bonuses. Roster bonuses are usually paid in the offseason. There are per game bonuses that would travel, obviously, because they're paid on a per game basis. So, D-Hop's salary, I want to say, is like $8 million. But that's for the full season. And of course, he's getting paid, 1/18 of that every week. And then he does have some money in per game roster bonuses. So right now, I think he's probably around like $6.5-7 mil owed for the rest of the year. In terms of that would travel to Kansas City. The last piece, and of course we'll get into, is the new landscape of NFL deadline trades is the incumbent team, the team with the player right now, being more and more willing across the NFL to eat that money. What that means is say, hey, we're going to convert this salary that would travel to you. We're going to convert it into a bonus so it stays with us. And in return, you're going to give us better draft capital. So when you ask, like, how much cap space does a team need, the Chiefs are near the bottom of the NFL. They have about $4.5 million right now in cap space, less than a DeAndre Hopkins would cost as of today. Would the Titans be willing to eat some money to get a better draft pick? Would the Chiefs obviously be willing to restructure some deals around to make room? All of those, mechanisms are at play as well.
And that's something the Browns already did, like in the offseason with that Cooper restructure, right? Like they kind of got ahead of this and made that move in the offseason before we started, probably with that idea in mind, right? That we might move him halfway through the year. We could get a better draft pick this way.
I think we need to start looking at some teams like a Cleveland, like a Philadelphia that do this a ton already. I think historically when you see that move happen for, let's say, a Raiders, because they're going to come up at some point in this conversation, you might say, all right, now that Vegas has converted this money, they're not going to trade this player. That sunk cost is going to keep that receiver on that roster. With the Cleveland Browns, I don't think that's really a constraint against them making moves. And so, yes, I think you could view it as they are plenty open to moving Amari Cooper. They probably care more about getting great draft capital than they do saving some cash on moving his salary. Obviously, both are nice to have. but you'd think for them, I mean, they've been leading the NFL in cash spending 3 years in a row. That's not as big of a constraint as, hey, we want to get a third-round pick instead of a fifth-round pick because that's just more meaningful to us. So, yes, Amari is only owed a minimum salary by the acquiring team if he were to be brought in. I think it makes him an extremely attractive trade candidate. You know, he's trying out there, but his body language at times is not great, and I don't think it's his fault at all, playing with probably the worst quarterback in the NFL right now once, Bryce Young found the pine. So, yeah, it's just a waste. I mean, he's just getting crushed out there. He's running 85-yard touchdowns that get called back for penalties. You got to feel for the guy.
While we're talking about the Browns, I don't want to put you on the spot because I didn't mention this to you, but the Deshaun Watson restructure before the season, where a lot of the money was pushed into future years, can you explain why the Browns did that or what the benefits would be? And does it actually make it that much harder to get out of the contract now because they made that move?
So we talk a lot about the whole restructure component of turning salary into bonus, spreading it out. They're one kind of element to me that makes it where it just does not matter how it's paid out, how it's put on the cap or the cash is if the salary is already fully guaranteed. When you're doing it with non-guaranteed salary, to me that's a little bit different because you're now taking money that in theory you could have gotten out of, you could have moved it elsewhere. I mean, you could have cut the player in mid-season, whatever you want to say. Obviously there's different, components to that conversation, but long story short, if the money's already fully guaranteed, if you're trading him, cutting him, if anything happens, you owe him that money. So it doesn't really matter whether it's getting paid out as salary or you're spreading it out over 5 years because that money is going to hit your books at some point and there's nothing you can do about it, from a football standpoint. So when they did that to me, it's just, look, the Browns have their theory on the inflation of the cap dollar and just getting an interest-free loan from future years to always kind of push those cap hits forward. And like I said, spend more money than anyone over the last 3 years. So it didn't say a lot to me. It didn't mean a lot to me. Obviously now, again, he's playing terribly through the first 6 weeks of the year. And maybe they wish they didn't do that, but it doesn't really matter because the money was already fully guaranteed anyway.
So does that not change their ability to even get out of the contract, or does it change the cap hits in the future years or make it any more detrimental to try to move on?
You actually could argue in the same vein as the Amari Cooper situation, you could argue it makes it easier to get out because, I mean, not that anyone was going to acquire him mid-season, but if they didn't move that salary forward, then you're trying to get a team to take on, $46 million, reduced by each week, whatever. So it doesn't change it for the hypothetical acquiring team. All it does is, again, you could argue there's more sunk cost for the incumbent team, but if they don't really care, which they don't, not really. I mean, he's impossible to move. I mean, again, based on the constraints we view normal NFL teams to operate under, which maybe we need to change a little bit, but he's very, very hard to move regardless.
So he said we'll get round to Davante Adams at some stage. Who are the obvious teams that would actually have the capacity to and be interested in trading for Adams?
I think the Jets is the most obvious one, not only just for capacity, which they do have. I mean, technically, as of right now, they have enough cap space to do it. The Hassan Reddick element is fascinating because he also could show up, and then it complicates that. If maybe he gets a little scared and decides, I'm gonna come in, and or he gets excited and wants to come in and play some winning ball with Davante Adams, whichever way you want to look at it. So, nevertheless, they have the room to do it if they want to. There seems to be a clear desire from both parties. I mean, you're seeing Garrett Wilson has multiple games with 20 targets now, which is funny because Lazard actually has been productive. Mike Williams had a couple nice catches the last couple games. But anyway, I think you need another guy that can actually separate at the second level, that isn't just kind of a check down outlet or a sit in the soft spot against zone type player. And head coach Aaron Rodgers now, I assume he's the interim. I haven't seen the news, but he wants to bring in Davante Adams as well. So I don't know. I wouldn't say the Jets are desperate. I think they have a good team, but maybe there is an element of desperation there as well.
Head coach / GM Aaron Rodgers is kicking the tires on old friend Davante Adams for sure. Ari was just on the show with us talking about the Saints as a potential option and how that might be complicated. The Davante Adams, Derek Carr connection. Now Carr's hurt. The Saints are 2-3. Are there any other Devontae Adams teams that would make sense to you, or do you think it is like we're looking at the Jets or bust here?
Yeah, I mean, I think a bunch of teams, it depends how you view it. And I think that, and I was going to get into this spiel a little bit, so I guess I'll drop it in now.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen some people talk about with Adams, oh, he has these massive salaries in 25 and 26. Basically irrelevant. I'm not going to say entirely wholly irrelevant, but like it doesn't actually matter. I think we need to, as a collective society of football fans and all that, people seem to have, comp picks down and different things down. Non-guaranteed salary in future years, you should just pretend it doesn't exist because it basically doesn't. So, and that's oversimplified, but essentially what it comes down to is, do you want to bring Devontae Adams in on a half-season flyer for $1 million a week, more or less, and then figure out the rest later? Do you redo the contract? Do you just let him walk, which would be cutting him? Do you figure that out during the trade? Do you actually change the contract in the trade, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So from that standpoint of where it's just a one-year flyer, you bring him in, you chase a ring, and then you say, thanks for your services, sayonara. I would love for the Detroit Lions to get in the mix here. They had the cap space. They're top 5 in the league right now in cap space. They obviously did already spend a ton of money this offseason. This is a new regime. It's a new team, but still, they're not always trying to spend that much cash and win Goff and Sewell and Amon-Ra, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if they want to make one more move, like I love what we've seen from Jameson Williams, his continued growth in this offense. Obviously, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Beyond that, there really isn't much. And I think if you bring a Devontae Adams in, you should be the favorite in the NFC, in my opinion, by a comfortable margin, frankly.
That would be spicy.
That would be. I love that. You might not love that as a Bears fan, Brad, but the Lions, making that move. Haven't heard their name in the Devontae Adams sweepstakes at all. I was curious about T. Higgins, if we should think about him at all. Last year of his contract, the Bengals kind of playing it year by year with him. Is there any chance if the Bengals, they're playing the Giants this week, I would expect them to win, but we'll see. If they're sitting here at 1-5 or 2-5, would the Bengals ever trade a T. Higgins, do you think?
And is the consideration for them effectively weighing up what they can get right now versus presumably the compensatory draft pick that they would get by letting him walk in free agency?
So that's kind of the sticky part, is that the team that would acquire him, that new team can't extend T. Higgins. So the deadline to extend a franchise tag player is July 15th for everyone, right? You can do some funky things and manipulate the 1 year. Like, you can still work within that 1 year deal. You guys remember a couple of years ago, Yannick Ngakoue forced the Jaguars to move him to Minnesota, actually reduced the amount of money he was going to get paid, because Minnesota said they had to lower the money a little bit to make it happen. Ngakoue was cool with it, and so that happened. So there's other examples. Clowney was a similar example. But anyway, if I'm a team acquiring T. Higgins and I'm saying, but I can't guarantee that I can sign him to a new contract or keep him around, do I tag him a second time? Does that cause problems that already exist? So it's complicated. Cincinnati, I think their whole plan, for better or for worse, is just, hey, we're going to go all in on 2024, and then we're going to figure it out. I don't think they foresaw a 1-4 start with trade requests from T. Higgins, from Trey Hendrickson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's been an absolute mess. But I think they just continue to say, no, we're going to try to win a Super Bowl this year and then figure things out.
It's worked offensively. It's just the defense is falling apart. They have the best offense of the Joe Burrow era. Keeping Higgins around for the extra year has worked so far on that side of the ball, but not on the defensive side. I'll let you go with this. Are there any trends or things, because you're making our listeners smarter, which is why we bring you on here. Anything else our listeners should know about, because you're mentioning about new ways of thinking about cap and cash and anything that's happening in the NFL or trends around the NFL that we should rethink how we discuss player contracts or anything going on around the league?
I don't know if this is new as it relates to the contracts themselves, but I do think you're seeing more and more of, for the longest time, it seemed like there was this long-held belief, and it could simply just be a team caring about depth and not wanting to give up on a player or not wanting to lessen their own depth. But I do think and I have an example to point to, I think you see teams kind of give up earlier, and that's probably not the best way to put it, but I'll just throw the example out there, like a Jalen Hyatt in New York, for example. That is a third-round pick, who you kind of knew coming out of Tennessee was probably going to have a little bit of a runway to learn, a real NFL offense, but obviously a great athletic talent, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the guy's just running cardio, just doing marathons every Sunday. And, even with Malik Neighbors out, 0 catches, 0 production, Darius Slayton and Jalen Hyatt are kind of redundant. I could go on forever. And so I think historically a type of player like that would never get moved. Now, I think it's possible. And I think, he has obviously expressed some frustration. A similar example to me is New England, where you have Kendrick Bourne about to come back healthy. They have so many young players already there. Tyquan Thornton, kind of a bounce back, kind of a positive story coming into this season. But do you say, okay, we're going to move Tyquan Thornton, maybe Javon Baker actually starts getting active on Sundays. We have Polk, we have, KJ Osborne's, we have all these players. Like, I think historically you would never see a recent draft pick in the top 100, let's say, get moved like during their rookie deal or earlier on. And I think you've seen kind of just perspectives in that shift a little bit to say, like you said earlier, are we just weighing the pick now versus the comp pick later? And should we kind of ignore everything else? I think teams would never ignore everything else before. I think you've seen a little bit of just kind of how teams have operate in that standpoint of this guy wants to leave. We have the depth. It's not helping the locker room and the vibes. Like, let's just benefit all parties. And that was never kind of the mentality you saw before the last couple of years.
Is that the sun that's just come out where you are, or have you just been landed in a nuclear apocalypse? Like, what just is Oppenheimer just happened
I've always
beside
had a
you?
bizarre. This is across multiple locations too, and Zoom has like the enhanced. I have no idea, but I'm in a dark room with lights on. I couldn't tell you.
It's angelic now. It has lit up.
It's like Christopher Nolan when the bomb drops and suddenly everything just goes white and Brad's just sitting there in the middle still looking at camera.
Appreciate you lighting up the room and enlightening our listeners today, Brad. Again, tell everybody what you're doing now, and we'll let you go.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So working at Grand Central Sports Administration, you can definitely still see me on Twitter talking about some football stuff. I'm actually now way more into the college game. So a lot of Saturdays scouting, studying. I'll probably put some names out there and maybe do some draft profile stuff like that. Once the kid has told me to kick rocks and we're not signing him, then maybe eventually I'll say, yeah, this kid's all right, he's decent. But anyway, no, I appreciate you guys having me on. Still talking ball over there, just maybe not as spicy. But anyway, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah,
Always
thanks, Brad.
appreciate you,
Appreciate
Brad.
you joining us. Brad Spielberger, the late Brad Spielberger, like us
The late
over
great.
at PFF. Ari, the late PFF. I mean, everybody, we're all late of PFF. I liked that last piece from Brad about teams, maybe taking a top 100 draft pick and not giving up on him earlier, but being willing to move him. Because we've heard Jim Nagy on here before talk about you might see a guy like the very first minicamp and be like, oh, we made a mistake.
Yeah.
And maybe teams moving on from what they might perceive as a mistake and letting a guy have a fresh start somewhere else earlier than before.
I mean, I think we've seen this before in other areas. Teams are getting better at not adhering to sunk costs, like acknowledging it's already done. We already did that, right?
Yeah.
It's gone. There's no way of getting it back. So we can either persist with the mistake and get nothing from it, or we can acknowledge the error and try and get something back and move on. I think we've seen elements of that, but I think it's just more of that. Not everybody is approaching it this way, but I think more teams are trying to kind of get away from sunk cost mistakes.
Your chair is a disaster.
Really is. It's an awful
If you
awful
could just
chair.
not move for the rest of the show.
Which is impossible because the chair is so structurally unsound that it won't stay in one position permanently. So it's just a constant squeaking mess is what it is.
All right, are you ready for this mailbag?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, we had, what was the last mail? We had the billionaire mailbag.
Billionaire. These might be from the same person.
Oh, is it really?
It's definitely a repeat emailer. But that's
Mike,
not a
it
bad
was Mike
thing.
last time. I mean,
Yes.
like Mike brought the billionaire segment.
Correct.
And
It's
it was
him again.
Okay,
So look, if you write us good quality stuff, doesn't matter if you're the same guy. We'll read it out again.
I mean, the research and the detail put into the billionaire segment, and now in the self-inflicted wound statement.
Which apparently was being done while he was forced to sit through his kids' Little League games. So you're saying this is what happens when he's got to sit there watching his kids play baseball.
See, I do some of my draft scouting.
Some of your best work.
Yeah. Remember I've said before, how I remember like the place I was where I was watching a certain player.
Yeah.
I was watching the great Tyrone Tracy
Great.
at baseball practice last year. That's how I connect Tyrone Tracy scouting. Now he's going for over 100 yards for the Giants against the Seahawks. Anyway, mailbag segment. I'll let you take it away. And this is on the back of us, off the top of our head, talking about the self-inflicted injuries.
Yeah, we were talking about guys that had injured themselves in various comedy ways. And this Mike says, you knew this was coming. In your Week 5 preview show, you guys went down an entertaining rabbit hole discussing the most ridiculous self-inflicted injuries in sports history. You mentioned Gus Frerotte giving himself concussion and joked about saving it for a Wednesday show. Whose self-inflicted injuries are the worst? Well, challenge accepted. I've compiled a list of some of the most infamous self-inflicted injuries across the NFL and other sports. There are too many to read, so I'd like to know which mishaps are your favorites. Let's dive into the misfortunes. As he says, way too many. So I've condensed it into a top 10 across all sports for brevity. He says the ones we mentioned that we can obviously skip over: Gus Frerotte, who nutted the wall of the stadium and injured himself, concussed.
Who what?
Nutted, headbutted. Glasgow handshake.
Carry on.
Bill Gramatica, kicker, tore his ACL while celebrating. Stephen Tulloch tore his ACL celebrating. Jason Pierre-Paul, who obviously blew half his hand off with a firework. And Plaxico Burress, who shot himself in the leg at a nightclub.
Torn between the two giants there, JPP and Plaxico Burress.
Right. Ones we did not mention. And so these are, as I said, edited into a top 10, and they're kind of my favorites from the list. Jason Peters, who in 2012, after rupturing his Achilles tendon during off-season workouts, Peters re-injured it when his rollabout scooter malfunctioned. The device basically couldn't handle his weight, causing him to fall and re-tear his Achilles. He's now back in the league. He's the only player in the NFL older than we are.
Man, so relatable. As someone who's overweight relative to what devices can handle.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. He's also the same age as us.
Right. That's one of those ones that, like, a huge part of you is like, that's a terrible thing to happen. But the other part of you acknowledges the funniness of that. Chris Hansen, punter of the Jacksonville Jaguars. In 2003, Hansen swung an axe in the locker room, which was one of those motivational props. Keep chopping wood, and accidentally struck his own leg, resulting in a deep gash. How did Mark Brunell let this happen?
Let me start with Mark Brunell had been benched by this time.
Right.
He started 3 games in 200003.
So you bench
They
him
had
and
moved
the
on
standards
to the Byron Leftwich era, and this is the first year of Jack Del Rio as head coach. I remember this distinctly.
Right.
Keep chopping wood, but don't chop your leg.
Brandon Marshall, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. In 2008, Marshall slipped on a McDonald's bag and crashed through a television set, severing an artery, vein, and nerve in his forearm. That is a brutal outcome from a very, very doable injury. Another food-related mishap, Nate Burleson, wide receiver for the Detroit Lions back in the day. Injury in 2013, Burleson broke his arm in a car accident when he tried to save a pizza from sliding off a passenger seat.
I mean, nobody wants the pizza to fall and the cheese is all over the place. Like, that's just human instincts to save the pizza.
I would imagine a lot of people have made that exact motion to do something very similar.
And probably didn't get into an accident and then hurt their arm.
It just hasn't resulted in a car accident off the back of it.
So don't be making fun of Nate.
Now, baseball players. I believe baseball players may win this overall in terms of quality of injury. Sammy Sosa, that's outfielder.
Yeah.
Chicago Cubs. In 2004, Sosa sneezed violently and sprained a ligament in his lower back, causing him to miss several games.
Now, that may have been related to the steroid use in Sammy Sosa.
Because that also,
where it might be easier to pull some of those muscles.
Well, that also just strikes me as an injury that happens when you're 40. You know? Like, if you did that today, wouldn't shock me in the slightest.
Oh, I could pull some muscle sneezing. Right. Absolutely. Could do that.
John Schmaltz. Pitcher, Atlanta Braves.
Good job.
Thank you. Allegedly burned himself while ironing a shirt he was wearing at the time. Schmaltz later denied this story, but it's become part of baseball folklore.
Yeah, there's a lot of baseball folklore stories that I choose to believe. John Schmaltz ironing a shirt while still wearing it. Yeah. I want to believe that, yes.
Glenn Allen Hill, outfielder, Toronto Blue Jays, suffered cuts and bruises after crashing into a glass table during a nightmare about spiders.
This one came to mind, and I was like, make sure you remember that Glenn Allen Hill, was daydreaming about spiders and hurt himself, and you were like, oh, it's on the list.
Yep.
I randomly remember hearing the announcers talk about this from a 1990 baseball game that I recorded on VHS.
Nice.
So this one's been in my brain since I was 8.
Adam Eaton, pitcher, San Diego Padres. In 2001, Eaton stabbed himself in the stomach while trying to open a DVD package with a pocket knife.
We've all been close to that, at least, right?
I don't know that we have.
It's a tough one.
Milton Bradley, outfielder, San Diego Padres, in 2007 tore his ACL while being restrained by his manager during an argument with an umpire. Steve, have you ever gotten so mad at an ump that you injured yourself?
No, I have not. Huh. I had one absolute livid blow up at an umpire. It was while I was coaching 13-year-old baseball.
Wow. Coaching brings it out of you.
And it was from a guy was umpiring who I was like friendly with before the game. Like we were talking and we knew some people and everything. And he called a balk on one of my players. And I lost my mind. Lost it. Because it was for the kids. I was defending the kids.
Coaching or...
Never tore an ACL doing that, though.
Coaching or being a parent, it somehow makes it way more likely that you're going to lose your mind than actually playing the game. And also what I discovered playing various sports is the less physical contact allowed in the game, the more likely it is to result in physical violence during the game, right? I had a knack of winding people up playing tag rugby way beyond my capacity to annoy them playing actual contact football.
Too hard with the tag.
It's just because people get so riled up because you can't settle it with if you do it in football, you're going to get hit the next play and everybody works it out on the field, right? Like, oh, you annoyed the crap out of me. Well, let's figure it out the next play and there's violence, right? Tag rugby, you can't make contact, so you never get that out and it just builds up until somebody snaps. It's kind of funny.
Just to be clear.
Yes.
I am not a crazy parent or coach who
Sounds
streams at umpires or officials.
Except
I don't care. I don't care how good my kids are at sports. I don't care about the results of their youth games. I just wanted to clarify that. I don't care.
I don't think you can walk it back.
In this particular instance, over 10 years ago, I was upset because he didn't warn my kid, And I think he got the rule wrong, too. He got the rule wrong. So I just kind of...
You can't.
I may have yelled for about 3 innings about him screwing this up.
You've already put yourself out.
But I am not a crazy parent/coach. I am
too
not.
Late. Anyway, number 10 on the list. We got a rugby player that we had to get in there. In 2017, Scott Baldwin, for Welsh rugby player and the Ospreys.
Baldy.
Baldwin missed a match after being bitten on the hand by a lion at a wildlife park. He tried to pet the lion through the bars. Turns out lions aren't big on head pets. And thankfully, we have a clip of this, which if you're watching, it's great. If you're not watching and you're just listening, it's also great. So stay tuned.
Hey, bye. All right. Quentin? Yeah. I'll just take him quickly for first aid. Go. Oof. You're all right.
Why was he petting the lion?
I mean, mistakes were made. I do like that They
look so friendly, though.
Yeah, I do like that the guy was just sort of casually, hey, can we just take him to the first aid, please? Turns out the lion bit him on the hand. So he was like, it's a tour, the lion, or the tour to South Africa, where obviously, you have those types of things around. So you had a game in a few days. Like, don't go petting lions. That's the kind of thing that can happen.
I mean,
feels like a mistake you could have avoided.
The timing of my next game would not be the final straw for me deciding whether or not to pet the lion.
I mean, it would be a consideration for me. I've got a game in a couple of days. I probably shouldn't. Those things of like, should I skydive today? It's like, well, I got a big game coming up. Maybe not. Maybe I'll wait for the off season. Then it doesn't matter. It would be a thing. I would be thinking,
if you die skydiving, you would do it in the off season rather than
during. You don't
do
stupid things right before a game.
I agree. I mean, I don't even want to pet, animals that you're allowed to pet. Never mind a lion.
Anyway, so he resolves this or ends this email with a question. So Steve, he was talking about how, ironically, with the two of us, where you're 9 foot tall and 3 bills, pushing 3 bills, chair threatening size, I'm not. Of the two of us, I'm the one with the former football career. Albeit very, very amateur. So he says, Steve, given your size and your interest in football, why did you never play? Was the allure of the pitcher's mound just too strong, or is there a self-inflicted injury story that we've been missing out on all this time?
There's no self-inflicted injury story. I did break my thumb catching a football when I was 10.
Okay.
But that did not keep me from playing further.
Right.
And I would like to clarify, I am a 2004 flag football champion.
That's
at UMass
flag
Lowell.
football. That doesn't count.
I'm just saying I'm a champion in a game involving a football. So just
Right.
throwing that out there. I never played because I know you see me as this big, overweight, nearly 300-pounder.
I've never said overweight.
That's what you see me as. My body type growing up, though, I mean, at one point I was probably 6'6", like 175. You know what I mean? Like that. Like I was probably 6'7", 200 my senior year.
Okay.
I had a very
Just the 6'7" part, though, is quite useful.
yeah, but just no physicality
That's your problem.
whatsoever. I was skinny, weak. Benching probably 75 pounds as a freshman in high school. I mean, just bad. No strength whatsoever.
So here's your
and
problem.
baseball was always going to be my path, and I did not want to hinder the path
With other things.
at all.
Oh, you were laser
With
focused.
injuries. I mean, I played
Okay.
basketball. I actually was ready to quit basketball after my sophomore year.
Yeah.
And my dad stopped talking to me. He was mad. Just stopped talking to me for like a month. Was like, dude, kid, you're playing basketball. Even my baseball coach was like, dude, play basketball. It's better for you. And I ended up playing. My dad started talking to me again. It was great. But I would not play football for fear of injury a little
Right.
bit. Yeah. I mean, so it's easy here on the desk talking about guys, you got a knee injury, just play through it this weekend. Tough it up. It's easy to do that now.
Yeah.
I would never do that, though.
See, yeah, people. Okay, your issue effectively is right. You may have got the size. You didn't necessarily have all of the size back then. You were stretched. You had the length, not the size.
Obnoxiously skinny.
Right. You also are terrible at using your size. You're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
a physical.
Not.
There are people that like contact, and there are people that don't like.
I don't
contact.
have even just pitching aggression. Like it needed to be dragged out of me.
You're
be
very
aggressive.
non-aggressive.
Yes.
People use that gentle giant term all the time. But
Yeah.
you are very non-aggressive.
Too
Not even that, but like to the opposite degree. Like when we were playing basketball at the Y, you were terrified of injuring the small people just by your size.
Oh, my elbow. I mean, I elbow people in the head all the time
Right.
and everything. Yeah, I
but
didn't
you were
want to.
terrified of that. So
Yeah.
you were like
No
you were
dogging me. No
Super
dog.
you were like super going easy on people, including me. I'm like, dude, I don't care if I get clocked in the head by your elbow. Go for it. I'm like, it's fine. Like it's same thing even with the pitching video and the baseball that I sent to Janko
afraid to
earlier
hit
for
you.
giggles. You were terrified of hitting me with the pitch. I'm like, okay, if you still had the 95-mile-an-hour fastball, I would still be okay with it. Having seen your 75-mile-an-hour pitch, I will happily stand in front of it. Don't worry about it. So you just don't. Yeah, you don't have the. You never had the football, the
No.
instincts, the aggression.
No.
Never had it.
I didn't even have the aggressive for basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, my senior year was pretty good, but I wasn't a great rebounder. Wasn't great at any
You
of that.
just don't. You don't have the aggression.
No.
Don't have the aggressive streak.
Nope. So that's why it was baseball or bust for me.
All right.
And you could say, I guess it worked.
I wanted to circle back just for a second to
Janko's got another injury we can discuss here.
just to the billionaire thing. I feel like it fits into the mailbag segment, even though it's not a mailbag thing. When we talked to Ari about the potential that Woody Johnson legitimately fired Robert Saleh because he got embarrassed in front of his rich ambassadorial friends.
Oh
in
yeah,
London.
yeah. You need to respond to this.
Well, so number one, I love that that's a thing potentially, and if it is true, it absolutely catapults Woody Johnson firmly into the top 5 of my crazy NFL billionaire owner rankings. I would have to think about it to figure out exactly.
We need
where.
official rankings. We need official rankings very soon.
But Roger Sherman, I don't remember where he works now, but you'll know him on Twitter @Roger. He tweeted this thing that said that was sort of replying to that whole idea, and said knowledge of weird things that piss specific billionaires off is probably more useful for explaining the NFL than a lifetime of studying the intricacies of the game of football, which I think sums this up nicely. This is one of the reasons, in addition to just I find it funny, why the billionaire mindset, I think, is actually relevant. Like understanding the way that those crazy people are going to react to random ass things that nobody else is thinking about is how you predict coaches are going to get fired.
It's job security too. Yeah. Like if
moves are gonna
Saleh
get
knew
made.
this, he never would have lost on Sunday.
Yeah, obviously.
If Saleh knew just how much winning across the pond meant, he would never have lost.
Right.
And now I think Woody Johnson needs to consider Urban Meyer, who
Who's
is
never
undefeated.
lost.
He is undefeated in the British Isles.
Right.
I don't think he won a game in America. Maybe one. But British Isles, undefeated. Urban Meyer could be his England specialist, maybe. going forward. He'll coach all the games across the pond going forward.
Well, maybe that's, you put him on retainer, right? You hire a regular coach, and then when you go to the British Isles, and you're sitting there with the ambassadorial friends, drinking Pims or whatever they do, then you bring in Urban.
Okay, really quick. Producer Janko's got Steve Sparks, the knuckleballer from the Brewers in 1994. One of the classic feats associated with the strongman is tearing a telephone book in half. Well, Sparks decided to try that for himself during spring training back in 94. He was a 28-year-old knuckleballer, had yet to pitch in the majors. His journey was delayed when he dislocated his left shoulder trying to rip apart the phone book. Sparks did eventually make it to the big leagues, and he pitched 9 years in his
That's
career.
one of those ones where we're a layer short of information on that, right? I don't understand how that's mechanically possible. Did his own power rip his shoulder out of its socket as he was trying to like Bo Jackson? Remember the injury that ripped Bo Jackson's hip apart or knee apart or whatever he did to himself? The story was that that was just a routine tackle. The story was he was essentially so powerful that a normal player just gets tackled on the play, right?
Yeah.
Bo Jackson was so powerful that he effectively ripped his own leg out of its bindings, and that's why his career was ended, right? Is this what happened here? This guy was so strong that he effectively tore his own shoulder out of its socket trying to open a phone book? Or did he slip on the phone book and ram his shoulder into a desk or something? What happened here?
That's great.
Here we go.
It was his non-throwing shoulder, which he had dislocated 15 times in life, so he was already susceptible.
Well, it said which he has dislocated. That doesn't say how many had occurred before that.
Well, maybe that started. Yeah. So this reminds me of the time that I injured almost said Tony Romo. Sergio Romo. Right? That wasn't self-inflicted. That was inflicted by me. So I have never injured myself, but I have injured
other people.
A Major League World Series hero in Sergio Romo.
Yeah.
And cost him at least a month of Major League salary. Absolutely. Put him on the injured list back in 2008.
Unfortunate.
Right before he was going to get called up. But I had to catch the fly ball during batting practice.
Had to.
Third time I've told that story now. Really quick, Ben Elsner of the 33rd team has also chimed in. Clay Buchholz, Red Sox pitcher, missed roughly half the season with a shoulder injury in 2013 because he fell asleep holding his baby daughter. I don't know how he injured his shoulder falling asleep.
Yeah, we're missing a layer of information there.
But these are good. These are good. I mean, send us any more.
Yeah.
But that was a great list by Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where's the rest of my stuff here?
So check the mic at the3013.com if you want to send us mailbag mail.
All right, we've got one more Shouty Show segment. This is like the official Shouty Show segment for today. The first one was just Jets related. Let's get to this. The first of our Shouty Show stuff, things. Go.
Deshaun Watson is awful. It's so awful that if somebody wanted to arrest him for being awful, I would accept it. It's that bad.
I don't mean to laugh.
I don't mean to laugh either. It's funny, but it's wrong to laugh, so I apologize.
Same.
It's not funny. His QBR yesterday in the against the Washington Commanders was 8.5. Do you know that wasn't even his worst QBR of the season? It was 8.3 against the Cowboys in week 1. Do y'all understand what I'm trying to tell y'all? You understand what I'm saying? I mean, you know QBR better than me. You understand what I'm saying? Anybody know QBR is you. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, are you kidding me? 8.5?
Here we go.
I just appreciate that Stephen A. bringing analytics to the table. That he has no idea about the number. He just knows that 8 is bad.
Yeah, and probably didn't even know that until somebody told him.
I did mean to bring this onto the Monday show. Deshaun Watson, we talked about the futility of the Browns quarterbacks. He also has ESPN's QBR, 2 of the 4 single-digit games this season, which is awful.
That was the lesser-known element, the lesser-known Shouty Show style, which is you don't shout until the very end. But you just make a series of quiet, understated,
slow build-up,
right? But outlandish statements, right? So you keep the tone down low, you keep the cadence, nice and even, but you quietly suggest that he's so bad that he should be arrested for being this bad.
Should be arrested,
right?
Yeah. To put it into 1980s WWF context, you have the Jake the Snake type of interview.
Have you watched that Vince McMahon documentary yet?
No.
Get on it. It's good.
Is it like a propaganda piece for him?
No.
Not one of those?
I mean, it would.
What's it on?
What's it on? Netflix.
Netflix. Okay, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
But Jake the Snake would draw you in with like a whisper. And then you have the Ultimate Warrior who would just scream the whole time. The Ultimate Warrior was the original Shouty Show guy. So he should be arrested.
The original Shouty Show guy.
Not for all the other accusations, but he should be arrested
Right.
for the football
Yeah,
playing.
that's the reason to arrest him.
Yeah.
All right. What's next?
Let's go to the next overreaction. And baby time. Hashtag I don't want to overreact, but Jordan Love is equal parts Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Frustrating, exhilarating, lethal. The Super Bowl has never been more on. See you in NOLA. Hashtag go, pack, go. AJ, do you think that's the case?
I've never really heard anybody, I guess, describe Jordan Love like this, but yeah, when you see this, it does make sense a little bit. Like Jordan Love, he's the guy. Like when I watch him, I feel confident in the Packers offense with him, and I think the rest of the team feels that too. So yeah, maybe Ty is right here.
That could be the chime in right there that puts AJ over the top for the Emmy.
Well, so interesting, McAfee, a new entry to the Shouty Show segment. I don't know if his show can qualify as a Shouty show, right? Now he does shout. They escalate.
It's not him. It's the emailer is doing the shouting.
Agreed.
It's their overreaction Monday.
But as a general concept, right? There is shouting on the McAfee show, but it's not Stephen A. Smith style shouting, right? It's not Shouty Shows shouting. And whether or not the McAfee show as a concept can be shouty, there is absolutely no way that AJ Hawk can be a Shouty Show person.
Are you afraid of Pat McAfee? You afraid that he's going to think that we're insulting him?
No, I mean, I don't care if we insult him otherwise. I just don't think his show is a Shouty Show.
I agree. I mean, they're doing something similar to us, which is essentially letting people make the outlandish statements and then reacting accordingly.
But whether or not they are, there's no way AJ Hawk is. You know, he's too monotone and beige to be a Shouty Show person.
AJ?
Yeah.
I mean, that's Emmy worthy. He agreed.
He
agreed. Dynamite drop in, AJ.
I agree.
The Jordan Love. I love that the Jordan Love reaction came after a Sunday in which he levised a pick six, and did you see the screenshot out there of like him at release and be like, how impressive is it to throw a ball from this position? It's like it was a pick six.
Not that impressive.
Jordan Love, even the best announcers in the world, cannot help but make the Aaron Rodgers plus Brett Favre comparison. You cannot go a game without some sort of direct comparison, like Aaron threw just like this. Oh, Favre, also like to roll out and throw pick sixes in opportune times.
What does that add? Adding Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers is simply meaning you're a really talented player who makes more crazy plays than Rodgers? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
It's kind of sad that Brett Favre, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, is now like his legacy is crazy plays.
I mean, he's still three-time MVP,
right? But that's what I'm saying.
In the NFL for a while.
That's what I'm saying. His resume is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, but his legacy is you bring crazy to the table.
That's some volatility to the game as well. Yeah, but McAfee, not exactly a Shouty Show, but they have the segment on Monday where they allow for Shouty Show type of takes.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to number 3.
But everyone convinced me, no, he's going to do a great job here in Pittsburgh. He majors in the run game, all of that stuff. We've seen very little of it so far.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great that he majors in the run game because Pittsburgh needed that.
Right.
But this guy's passing attack, I mean, oh, my God. What do we got? What high school did we borrow this passing attack from?
Seriously.
I mean, it's awful. It's awful. I don't care what kind of receivers you have. So to me, no, when you say he's an overrated guy, I mean, I get it, man. We know he got money and stuff like that. Doesn't mean you're I'm going to criticize you when I think it's awful, and I think it's awful.
So Rex Ryan is quietly, I think, becoming one of the more impressive Shouty Show exponents out there, right? Yeah. A lot of times you get these coaches and they go on shows and they either value the relationships they still have with people in the league, or they more often want to get back in the league. In either case, you are reluctant to go too far in terms of criticism, right? And it leads to some pretty crappy television. But then you get people like Rex Ryan, and where he becomes one of the top Shouty Show people is it's impossible to differentiate between things Rex Ryan says and things drunk people at a bar say, right? And this is true with Stephen A. Smith as well, and Skip Bayless. And this is really a Shouty show. This should be part of the definition. In order to be a true Shouty show, like a true piece of art from the Shouty show genre, it has to be completely indistinguishable from a drunk person at a bar. And that's where we're going.
That's good.
There's no analysis there. It's just, this is garbage.
Yeah. I mean, you could say passing attack's outdated. I mean, Rex has the ability to really disparage the subject.
Yes.
Right.
And to break it down,
really
to actually
disparage.
explain why he believes that this is terrible. Instead, it's just like, this is garbage because I say so.
Yeah. You could say it's outdated. Like, we made the statement, maybe Aaron Rodgers 10 years ago offense is a little outdated. The non-Matt LaFleur offense, static, slant flat 900 times a game. Maybe it's a little outdated. Rex? No. High school.
Yeah.
That's high school Harry type stuff. You know what I mean? That's Rex has that ability.
Yeah.
Which is not surprising. Like when when you're hiring Rex Ryan for a Shouty show, you expect you're going to get some of this stuff based off his
right. I mean, you might
willingness to say a lot of things as a head coach.
Yeah. You might hope there would be more insight there, but Shouty will do.
No insight whatsoever.
None. In
Just
that clip, anyway. Yeah.
High school Harry, Arthur Smith. That's what he is. All right. We always appreciate the Shouty Shows for giving us little content to react to. That was Rex's debut here?
Yep. Rex's debut.
Our boss, Mike T's old colleague with the Jets.
Rex's debut. We got
McAfee,
which is a debatable one, whether it even qualifies.
And we got the whispers of Stephen A.
Right. The lesser known Stephen A. style.
Because you can't yell, you cannot shout the entire.
You got a very
how many hours are these shows on?
You got a very cadence, you got a very volume, timbre, the whole thing.
It is a good it's a good trait that speakers use though, is to slow it down, right? Draw people in, start wanting to know what's next. What's he gonna say? Should be arrested. Yeah. You just set it up. It's a really good setup. Should be arrested for that football plan.
Yes.
All right, let's get to PrizePicks. Doing pretty well so far here, Sam.
You are.
PrizePicks been with us for 2 weeks now, and my lineup is 2 for 2.
Yes. You have yet to be wrong.
I've yet to be wrong on 7 picks across 2 lineups.
Correct.
Including the Caleb Williams free square.
Yes.
7 for 7 on picks so far. I almost don't want to play again.
Sure. I mean, yeah, now is the time where you shut up shop and leave.
I don't feel. I'm going to give you my picks for the week, my lineup for the week. I don't feel as good about it. I thought I had some really strong reasons for last week that I felt great about. So we're going to try this again. So here are my picks, my PrizePicks lineup for this week. We're going to start with David Montgomery. Is this the right order this week? David Montgomery going more than 59.5 rushing yards against Dallas. Now, he's been at 90-plus in 2 of his 4 games. I'm also thinking the matchup that we'll break down in depth tomorrow, the Lions against this Dallas defensive front. And look, Dallas has played better against the run the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
Playing a little bit more physical. But I still can't get it out of my head earlier in the year against good offensive lines and good running games of the Saints at the time, of the Ravens, that Dallas is going to be overmatched. Montgomery's physicality, I still don't really trust the tackling at the second level for Dallas. I just think Montgomery, more than 59.5 rushing yards, feeling good about that because of Dallas's run defense here.
Okay. I mean, as you said, they clamped down 2 weeks ago, and then against Pittsburgh, just 3.4 yards per carry for the Steelers, 3 of which was Najee Harris. So,
And now I have to wait for Monday night for this one, but James Cook, similar number here, right? Same number. James Cook going more than 59.5 rushing yards against the Jets, and he's been at 70-plus in 3 of his 5 games. Similar reasons, though. Jets run defense, don't trust them, don't trust their tackling. Guys like Will McDonald out there who are pass rush specialists having to play the run a little bit more. I think Buffalo's going to have a chance to move the ball on the ground, and especially coming off of Josh Allen's last performance, maybe trying to get the ball into James Cook's hands a little bit more here.
Yeah. Again, another team coming off a pretty good run defense performance in the Jets defense. Didn't allow much against Minnesota in London,
understand.
Albeit with Aaron Jones getting hurt.
The totality of the season, though, is what I'm looking at, not just the last performance.
All right.
Right. So I'm not overreacting to last week. And then I'm kind of Going back to the well here with Rome Odunze, more than 35.5 receiving yards. Had him last week. He had only 40 receiving yards last week, but the game got out of hand, right? The Bears were blowing him out. Didn't really have a whole lot of passing opportunities in the second half. I think it'll be a closer game this week. Bears against the Jags in another London game. Odunze, I think, continuing to progress. 2 weeks ago, I liked the more than last week because of him being open a ton the previous week. And so we're going to go Odunze again, more than 35.5.
All right. Let's see if you can maintain your pace.
Do we have the full lineup to go through here? So David Montgomery, James Cook, and Rome Odunze. All more than.
All optimism.
All optimism. I like to be a little bit more optimistic. I can't wait to see what your lineup looks like tomorrow.
Yeah.
After last week where you pretty much lost it after one play from scrimmage.
Not pretty much. Did.
You did.
One play.
And you had QB rushing projections in there and everything. But yeah, so I'm going to be optimistic this week. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. You have 10 million members, and you guys can join right now. Download the PrizePicks app. Use the code CheckTheMic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. It's code CheckTheMic over at PrizePicks. $50 instantly when you play $5. PrizePicks, run your game. You could join us on the Discord as well. Discord link in the description. Join us on the Discord. We'll have some fun with that. I'm also answering some questions on the Discord this week about the NFL draft. We have a special bonus episode. We're going to be starting on Fridays here. Bonus Check the Mic on YouTube only, where we're going to be talking draft.
Nice.
This week will be the first one. I took a few questions in the draft chat of the Discord, but this week Mike Renner will be our special guest on Fridays. Check the Mic draft episode. We'll be doing this throughout the season with a special guest. You don't even have to show up.
Sweet.
You could take Friday off. I'll do it myself.
Awesome.
But Renner's going to be on the show this Friday talking QBs, Travis Hunter. He's got some sleepers we're going to break down and some mailbag type stuff. So
sounds good.
That's all coming up here this week as well. You want to go through what we're reading this week, Sam?
Yeah, just another reminder that in addition to our show over here, there's also a website at the33rdteam.com. So there's all kinds of stuff up there that you should be checking out. Ian Valentino's latest mock draft is out, which has the Patriots not selecting an offensive lineman at the top of this draft. Tyler Brook on why the Jets fired Robert Saleh and escorted him out of the building, apparently.
That is not true. He did not get escorted out of the building in the way that it was.
What do you mean it's not true? That's what it said. How do you know it's not true? Were you there? Were you in the building? You don't know.
It was normal procedure that you don't walk
out of the building
alone. It wasn't, look.
Didn't let him address the team.
We've been in an office at a point.
Escorted him out of the building.
I've been in an office before where somebody had to go, hands up, off the keyboard, get out of here. I've seen that go down before. I do not believe that was the situation for Saleh.
Well, anyway.
Stop spreading that misinformation.
It's not misinformation. It's accurate information. Kyle Krabs cranking through draft content, ranking quarterbacks. C.H. Herman has got you covered for fantasy, including waiver wire ads, start sit advice, etc. And Marcus Mosher has Washington entering the top 5 of the power rankings. The rookie-led Washington Commanders.
A fascinating story over at Washington. So, yeah, go check it out, the33rdteam.com. Anything else for today?
No, I think we're out.
Did we forget anything? Any notes in the chat that I've missed here?
Probably.
All right, thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow with our Week 6 NFL preview here on Check the Mic.